Steelers Nation, buckle up, because what we just heard from Arthur Smith could mean a whole new era for Pittsburgh's offense. We're talking strategy shifts, hidden strengths, and a passing game that's about to attack where defenses least expect it. And that's just the start. From training camp at St. Vincent College, the Steelers are laying the blueprint for 2025. And offensive coordinator Arthur Smith made it crystal clear this year's attack is going to be built on our strengths, and that means getting creative, keeping defenses guessing, and finding that perfect balance between pounding the rock and striking through the air. Smith's history in Tennessee and Atlanta leaned heavily on the ground game, but here in Pittsburgh, the formula is evolving. One of the biggest changes, a renewed focus on throwing over the middle of the field, something the Steelers have avoided in recent years. Last season, they ranked near the bottom of the league in that area. But in camp, passes to guys like Darnell Washington and Roman Wilson are hitting those seams, and it's forcing defenders to play honest. Scotty Miller even told us that Aaron Rodgers has been masterful at manipulating safeties and linebackers, moving them just enough to create lanes. That's exactly the kind of veteran presence that could turn this scheme into one of the most unpredictable in the AFC. Before we dive into the latest updates from camp, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and smash the bell icon so you never miss the breaking Steelers news and insider updates we're bringing you every week. Now let's get back to it. Arthur Smith isn't just talking about formations and route trees, he's also zeroing in on the offensive line. He knows their performance will determine just how dangerous this offense can be. Protect Rodgers, open lanes for Najee and Jalen, and suddenly this team becomes a nightmare to defend. And we can't forget Cam Heyward, who also spoke about his contract situation and his commitment to leading this defense. Even while negotiations loom, his focus remains on setting the tone in camp. Bottom line, this isn't last year's Steelers offense. This is a unit ready to challenge teams from every angle, and if training camp is any indication, Pittsburgh's playbook is about to get a whole lot bolder. Arthur Smith says it's simple. Build around your team's strengths. Last season, inconsistency and injuries up front made the offense one-dimensional at times. That's not happening again. With more experience on the offensive line and better chemistry in picking up blitz, there's a growing confidence this group can protect Aaron Rodgers long enough to exploit every inch of the field. Smith knows keeping the same 5 linemen healthy is rare, but if the football gods allow it, the consistency could be a game changer. Even with 4 younger starters, the communication is sharper, and the physicality is showing in camp. On the sidelines, Rodgers isn't just spectating, he's deeply engaged. Smith talks about how they use every moment to break down situations, share perspectives, and get on the same page. Rodgers' 20 years of experience means there's almost nothing he hasn't seen, and that wisdom is already shaping this offense. No showboating for the cameras. It's pure football IQ at work, mentoring quarterbacks and fine-tuning details in real time. What's becoming clear is that this offense will look unlike anything Smith has run before. With Rodgers' ability to read defenses, manipulate safeties, and punish mistakes, the playbook opens in ways past Steelers teams couldn't dream of. That doesn't mean the run game is disappearing, far from it. The long-term plan still leans on a physical ground attack, but in the early weeks, Smith might trust Rodgers to shoulder more of the load while the offensive line fully gels. Later in the season, that balance could shift, making the Steelers far less predictable when it matters most. If it works, Pittsburgh will have an offense that can change its identity on the fly, a nightmare for defensive coordinators, and exactly the kind of unpredictability that fuels deep playoff runs. We saw early signs in the first preseason game. Broderick Jones showing poise, the line communicating better, the rhythm starting to click. Sure, there will be rough weeks. Every team has them. But in those moments, Rodgers' ability to control the game, manipulate coverages, and keep the offense moving could be the difference between a setback and a win. Now picture this, by the end of the year, the passing game has already carried stretches of the season, and suddenly the run game, now fully matured, becomes just as dangerous. Defenses that spent months bracing for Rodgers' arm now have to survive Najee Harris and Jalen Warren pounding them on the ground. That's when an offense becomes unpredictable and downright playoff dangerous. And while the offense is taking shape, there's another story heating up, one that's all about leadership, pride, and the heart of this defense. Cam Heyward has been at the center of Pittsburgh's identity for years, and now his contract situation has become a major talking point. We caught up with him, and the way he handled those questions with honesty, perspective, and a deep sense of what it means to wear the black and gold made me rethink how I viewed this situation entirely. It's clear this isn't just about numbers on paper. It's about legacy, loyalty, and the battles still ahead. There's been plenty of noise about Cam Heyward's contract stance. Some fans can't understand why he's asking for an adjustment so soon after signing an extension last year. But when you look closely at the numbers and at what he's accomplished, it's not hard to see where he's coming from. On an average per-year basis, Heyward's deal ranks just 22nd among defensive tackles and 30th among all defensive linemen, despite him earning first-team All-Pro honors last season. When that extension was signed, he was coming off an injury and playing through it, which lowered his bargaining power. Now, after another dominant season, he feels the contract no longer reflects his value. Heyward explained that when he signed, he told the team outright if he came back with an All-Pro year, he'd be asking to revisit the deal. At the time, people laughed it off. He used that as fuel. He also made it clear that while stability for his family matters, so does being paid in line with what he brings to the field and the locker room. Last year, before the new deal was finalized, the Steelers even approached him about taking a pay cut. Coming off injury, he feared being cut altogether, so the two sides struck a deal. But as Heyward points out, the market has shifted, and his salary isn't even close to half of what some peers at his position are making. Look at the numbers backs him up. His 2020 extension averaged $16.4 million per year, which at the time was about 8.3% of the Steelers' salary cap when the cap sat at $198.2 million. Fast forward to last year when the cap jumped to $255.4 million, and you start to see the gap. Contracts have ballooned, and relative to today's cap, his deal looks far less competitive than it did when it was signed. Back in 2020, Cam Heyward's deal averaged $16.4 million per year. By 2024, that number had actually dropped to about $14.5 million. That's nearly a $2 million decrease in annual value, and when you look at it as a share of the salary cap, it went from roughly 8.3% down to around 5%. In other words, not only did the dollar amount shrink, but his portion of the cap space did too. And here's the thing. Last year, the Steelers came to him asking for a pay cut. They were worried about his age. They were worried about an injury. And in the back of their minds, they were probably wondering, could this be the final chapter of an incredible career? That's why the new deal happened. It wasn't a reward. It was protection for the team. But during those talks, Heyward made something crystal clear. If he came back and played at a first-team All-Pro level, he was going to ask for a better deal. He says people in the room chuckled at that. Maybe it was Omar. Maybe it was Mike Tomlin, Andy Weidel, Art Rooney, who knows? But whoever it was, that reaction stuck with him. He took it personally. And then, he went out and delivered exactly what he promised, one of the best seasons of his career. From his perspective, this isn't just about more money, it's about correcting an undervaluation. They cut his salary because of one injury in 4 years. And outside of that, he's been as reliable as they come. He's played through pain, anchored the defensive line, and still produced at an elite level. People sometimes look at these numbers and say, he's already making millions. Why not just be happy? But think about it, Cam Heyward is one of the best in the entire world at what he does. Not just the NFL, the world. Out of hundreds of thousands of high school players, only a tiny fraction make it to college football. From there, even fewer make it to the NFL. And from there, less than 1% ever reach first-team All-Pro status. Heyward is in the top fraction of the top fraction of the top fraction. So if you were the absolute best at your job, the kind of once-in-a-generation talent people build teams around, wouldn't you expect to be compensated like it? That's where Heyward is right now. He's proven he's still dominant. He's proven he can lead. And he's simply asking to be paid in a way that reflects the reality. When you've been a first-team All-Pro multiple times, when you've been the heartbeat of the defense, when you've worn that Steelers jersey your entire career, and when you even took a pay cut to help the team last year, it's not hard to understand why Cam Heyward is asking for what he's asking for. In my eyes, he's earned the right to make that request. This isn't about greed. It's about principle. and I think it's going to get resolved. I've seen this play out before. TJ Watt's deal, Hayward's last deal, the pattern is the same. Players need to stand firm. If they don't, they'll never get what they truly deserve. That's just how negotiations work. From what I've heard, and from conversations with people close to the situation, I fully expect the Steelers to get something done. Eventually, Hayward will look at the offer, say, "Yeah, that works," and his value will be set right where it should be. Then the season starts, and this whole thing fades into the background. But before we move on from Hayward, the conversation shifts to the defense as a whole, and one position group in particular. I asked defensive coordinator Terrell Austin about the safety room, because we've been wondering how they're going to handle it this year. His answer was telling. When it comes to veterans like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Damontae Kazee, there's no strict, strong, or free safety label. They're fluid. They can line up high, drop into the box, switch roles mid-play, whatever the situation demands. Austin's philosophy is simple. Let great players play to their strengths. Trust their instincts, trust their preparation, and let them adapt on the fly. That flexibility could be one of the Steelers' quiet weapons this season. It's the kind of thing that doesn't make headlines in August, but shows up in big moments when the games actually matter. What really stood out to me is the way this safety group operates. When Minkah Fitzpatrick and Damontae Kazee are out there, the roles blur, they can switch on the fly, cover deep, drop into the box, whatever the situation calls for. But when it comes to Deshaun Elliott, Terrell Austin made it clear. He thrives when he's closer to the line of scrimmage. That's his comfort zone, and they're going to keep him in positions where he can be at his best. It was almost a playful moment. We were talking about how Juan Thornhill and Chuck Clark can handle either safety role. I asked, "So Deshaun can do that too, right?" Austin just laughed and said, "I'm not going to say all that." But that exchange told me something. This coaching staff knows exactly where each guy shines, and they're not going to force square pegs into round holes. In camp and preseason, both Thornhill and Clark have been impressive. Thornhill seems to have locked down that free safety role. He's staying disciplined, keeping plays in front of him, and delivering clean, physical hits that set a tone. Chuck Clark brings the same flexibility, stepping up to the line to help in run support and still covering deep when needed. That adaptability is dangerous in the right defense. Opposing quarterbacks already have to account for TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith screaming off the edges, Cam Heyward anchoring the interior, and shutdown corners like Jalen Ramsey moving all over the formation. Throw in Joey Porter Jr., who's coming off a strong practice, and now you've got a secondary that can disguise coverages, rotate post-snap, and bait defenses into mistakes. When every level of the defense has playmakers, and they're healthy, the game slows down for the defenders and speeds up for the offense. That's when bad throws happen. That's when turnovers pile up. And with Thornhill, Clark, and Elliott ready to pounce, this could be the kind of unit that doesn't just make stops, but changes games. The real question, can they take what's already a top-tier defense and push it into elite territory, top 5, maybe even number 1? With the right health, communication, and a little creative trickeration from Austin, it's not out of the question.